Hi, this is Rob G from Icons of Fright, and I'm joined with the writer and director of Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, Tommy Lee Wallace. And our mutual friend, Sean Clark from Horror Hound Magazine, dropped by as well. And on behalf of pretty much all Halloween 3 fans, I think it's an honor to sit here and finally hear you talk about this movie after all these years. I think it's long overdue.
Thanks, man.
Big time.
This is Witchcraft Meets the Computer Age. Deborah Hill, I think, had kind of the original concept, and John certainly asked her to run with that, and they ran right to Nigel Neal, who came up with the script. And we go on from there.
What was the original story, or when you were brought on board? What was kind of the kernel of the idea that Nigel came up with that you were able to run with?
The the script that unfolds here on the screen is it's at least 60% Nigel Neal, story of a doctor who goes off in search of uh, answers to a mystery, uh, partially to help this young woman who comes to him in distress. That's pretty much the yarn, and of course they come upon this mad scientist, toy genius guy who turns out to have a plot to destroy the children of America. Uh, that's that's more or less what Nigel wrote.
So was it you that interjected the whole Tom Atkins other motive just basically to get laid?
I think we kind of brought that out a little bit, you
Okay.
know.
Well, can you talk a little bit about the origins of the project? Because obviously you have a long history with John and Deborah from their previous films.
Well, this sequels in general after Halloween was still a fairly rare concept. It hadn't become the disease it has become in Hollywood now, and the idea that they were going to do Halloween 2, that was a train leaving the station, whether John and Deborah were aboard or not, and they came up with the thing, a script that I was offered the part, and for about 5 minutes I was the director of Halloween 2, but unfortunately I just didn't like the script, and so I waited with bated breath, and opportunity popped up when they were approached about Halloween 3, and their condition was not a true sequel. We don't want to do the Michael Myers saga for this movie, and this was supposed to be a yearly event uh, thing where every year you could, I mean, God, you could come up with 1,000 stories about Halloween, about the season, and this was supposed to be the first in a major anthology, any of which could theoretically generate their own sequels, and so off we went into the adventure of Halloween 3.
Can you talk a little bit about this opening scene and where you shot it? I mean, one of the things that always stands out to me is the score and just the mood of it all.
It's in a little transitional area of Los Angeles County between the valley and um, Newhall, up in the hills there.
It's
And
right off the 14 freeway.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's actually a lumber yard now. Where he's at right now is this. It's a lumber yard, and the gas station is just walking distance down the street. Actually,
Yeah, there are a lot of neat locations out in that neighborhood. I don't know whether Sean knows far more than I which of them still exist, but we found other later on in the movie. There's some other bits and pieces when they get to Connell Cochran's world uh, that were located out in that neighborhood.
Once you were brought on as director, how quickly did this kind of all come together?
It was on a fast track. It was a greenlit movie, $2.5 million through the auspices of Universal, And I'm going to say there was not not a lot of time involved. I think we had about 8 weeks prep before it was time to shoot, but it was unfolding pretty quickly. And these, one of my favorite scary things is corporate bad guys. It still exists, to this day, is my sense that the best bad guys in the world are suits.
Who were these guys that played the suits? I mean, other than Dick Warlock, nobody really knows who these other guys were.
Well, they came because none of them had to speak. They came through extras casting, and the idea was make them all sort of either redhead, blonde, or really dark-haired Irish guys. That just seemed like a good silly joke. This cadre of dangerous robotic kind of characters. And here and there in the movie, when there are like 6 of them lined up together, it does work, I think. It's kind of cool.
Well, this is the gas station that's right down the street, on the same street as the junkyard that we just saw. And it's still there. The building's still there. It almost looks, last time I saw it, looks like it's being used for some sort of storage. They just have it fenced off, and it's just filled with stuff in the yard and inside the building. So I don't know if it's still used for filming or not, but it's still there. And I'm probably one of the only nerds that went to Stonehenge and actually was like, check it out, I'm in a place from Halloween 3. I actually went to Stonehenge and said that. So.
Here's
Sean,
this.
you're a true fan.
Nerd.
Yeah, you have to talk about these Silver Shamrock songs since it's...
Yeah, well, those all the whole jingle is me, all the voices and all the instrumentation, mainly because I work cheap. Now, all the way back on John's movies, I tended to do voiceovers. I was in the cutting room all the time, and so I was the one who tended to go downstairs to the sound shop and record my own voice, like everything, temporary gunshots or any of that stuff. So I did all, even if an actor dropped a line, I would do the actor's line, and then we would replace it later. But for the temporary radio voices, we wound up kind of liking my cheesy ass voiceover guy voice, and so we just wound up keeping that. And by the time Halloween 3 came along, it was like, okay, this is kind of an inside joke, I'll just do it,
Whose idea was it to use London Bridge as the music?
That just came out of my head. It was like, what can we use that is guaranteed? I either make up a song or I use something that is so public domain that there's impossible that it would be a rights issue. And London Bridge turned out to have that insidious kind of crawl around in your brain quality that just sticks with you. He died. I love that movie Dying, where people really crank out. Since that time, I've actually been with people who died, and it didn't work that way.
There's the great Tom Atkins and mustache.
Yay!
Now, didn't you say that this was your house at the time, this living room?
No.
Because I'd asked you about this location before.
That was in Sierra Madre. We had to fill out a day because the amount we actually shot in Sierra Madre didn't constitute an entire day. And so as I recall, it was just a house down the hill, a block or two from the town square there, that we used to fill out the rest of the shooting day.
Now, when you filmed this, did you realize that was Jason Miller's son from The Exorcist, Father Karras?
Did not. I don't know any of that stuff.
I'm just asking.
I'm like on the outside of all those conversations. Nobody dials me into those insiders things. I'm just this lerpy guy that runs around with a shot list, trying to get the day. My ex-wife, Nancy, I guess Loomis, doesn't go by that name anymore, but a fine actress, and the only person who appears in the first three Halloween movies live action, unless you count Jamie Lee on TV.
Now, the interior of this hospital, I've never been able to find either. I've been told by a few people, I think including you, that this location had been torn down or was about to be torn down.
If it is still there, it's in Newhall, out in that same neighborhood we were just talking about. It was a hospital that had been long since closed down, so it was ideal for movie makers. Could just move in for a couple of days and decorate it and shoot, but I have no idea whether it's still there or not.
I'm out of here. And was that the actual exterior of that building?
Yes.
Okay. I've never been able to find that one.
Yeah, it's like on the LA side of Newhall. South side.
Even Tom's even messing with the nurse,
Yeah.
Look at that, see?
Yeah, he's a hound. Well, Deborah suggested Tom for Halloween 3. We were all pals from, social circles. Adrienne and Tom and Garn Stevens, who's also in the movie. They were married at the time and old buddies and spent social time together. But it was Deborah's idea to put Tom in this movie, mainly because it wasn't like he was this young guy, he had some seasoning on him, and he wasn't the pretty boy, and that appealed to me enormously. It was just a different way to go.
Yeah, I think that his performance in this, and just him in this movie is one of the things that really kind of, I think, makes this film work. He's a believable regular guy.
Mm-hmm. With mega flaws.
And mega charisma. You worked pretty closely with him, though, in The Fog, didn't you? So you knew him
I knew him already. So it was a short conversation. Deborah said, "What do you think about Tom Atkins for the movie?" And it was like, 1 beat, 2 beats. Hey, yeah, good idea. And we were done.
It's funny, before off camera you had mentioned one of your influences was Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is kind of obvious when we watch it back now. Can you talk about some of the other things that you were kind of calling influences from in terms of this film?
Well, it was a weird assignment because I was well aware that the audience we'd be appealing to were fans of Halloween, even though, God, that is so gross. That is really grotesque. Forgotten that appliance that, rubber skull with inner bone structure that broke a certain way. Oh, shit. What were we talking?
Influences.
The assignment to follow up Halloween and Halloween 2 with something that would appeal to the same kind of fan base. I was definitely aware of that. And so you'd have to say Halloween was a primary the influence, of course. But really, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original, directed by Don Siegel, is, it would have to be at center stage in terms of influence. Beyond that, I certainly have my own little guilty pleasures of B-movies, horror movies like The Giant Gila Monster, Invasion of the Killer Shrews, not Invasion, the Killer Shrews. Just definitely grade B stuff that I just adore. I just love it. Simply because it doesn't try to be more than what it is, you know. Blow that thing up, yeah. When in doubt, just make it blow up real big. It's funny, let's see, 1982, and I'm sitting here as a former and possibly future editor, just wanting to make all these trims. It just seems slow to someone who, like many others, of course, watches movies all the time, watches television all the time, and the pace in general has picked up since 1982. So I keep looking and going, hey, how come you didn't trim another, 16 frames off that shot?
No, Linda, it's nothing like that at all. If you just relax for a minute,
I'm very proud of the widescreen aspect of this movie. And I learned that from John. And of course, the two of us learned from Sergio Leone, among others. Use that frame, really spread the picture. And a lot going on just in a frame like this, where there's plenty to look at, your eye moves around. And essentially all that's happening is a little bit of conversation on a telephone. But it's the real movies. I remember on Assault on Precinct 13, we were projecting dailies in a motel room on a bed sheet. But that image, that anamorphic image spread out on the wall, and it just went on forever. And I thought, yes, man, this is a real movie. It's wide.
Did you know immediately that you wanted Dean Cundey to shoot it?
Oh, yeah, without question. I mean, he was family, and anybody who's worked with him, and certainly his work on Halloween, attested to his talent. And so it was a foregone conclusion that was an inside job already. The question would have been, why would we not want Dean? Because he was already there and he's family and so forth. But especially in view of where his career went and the heights to which he ascended, goodness, I was a lucky duck to have him, not only him, but his whole crew along on this. Because we'd been in the trenches before that on Halloween in the Fog, of course, and it just felt so good to have my guys around me for my first time out as a director. It felt really deeply supported.
You can already see the gears turning in Tom's head.
Yeah.
He's like, who's this high?
Somehow he can pull that off in every movie.
Yeah, is it wrong to hit on her now, or should I wait? So talk about casting Stacy. How did she get involved?
Well, it was the conventional. Whereas Tom, of course, was this sort of inside job. Stacy was a working actress out there, and she showed up at an audition, and she was clearly the winner. And to answer the anticipated but unasked question, no, I don't have any idea whether she was a damn robot at this point or not. I really didn't think it through that clearly. This was added later. This little subplot with the technician, the lab technician, was not part of the original script.
Was this part of reshoots, or was this added later to the script before
No,
filming?
I believe this came, to the best of my memory, this came as a little extra shooting after we put the film together and said, we need a little something more here.
It's one other person for Tom to hit on.
Yeah.
Well, he just gestures that. Do you remember that? Do you still have that? Oh yeah. Like there's something that had happened there. Just another conquest of the Atkins.
It's fabulous to me that these conventions that happen from time to time for fans of the horror movies in general, have they've made Tom Atkins into a god.
Now those paintings on the wall behind him are still in that bar. They are. This is the bar is, I believe today it's called the Buccaneer in Sierra Madre, and it's still there. And that mural behind the bar there by the TV is also still on the wall.
Still going strong.
Yeah. So whose idea was it to do the little Halloween commercial in there?
John did a rewrite of Nigel Neal, and I did a rewrite of John, and I'm sure that popped up in John's version or mine. I'm not sure where. That wouldn't have been a detail that Nigel would have put in there.
Hi. My name's Ellie Grimbridge.
We had a costumer who
One of the nurses told me.
just was crazy enamored with black. And every actor who walked in the door, certainly every actress during that era, also was crazy enamored with black. It's like, oh, I look so good in it. And it was a struggle for me to, I want my actors to be comfortable and to feel really confident in what they're wearing, but I also want to be able to see them. Here's an example of a scene where I don't know, I must have given up on the argument that day or something, but she's wearing black, and it bothers the hell out of me that you can't really, God, you can't pick her out of the shadows of the bar because she's not wearing anything that you can get a fix on. It just sort of disappears. Those kind of details, I probably pay more attention to them than I should.
Now, this is another location I've never
This was,
found exact, which you said it's Sierra Madre still, right?
Sean, you know what? I think we shot this in a vacant store in Lolita,
Really?
on the corner maybe.
Okay.
Now my memory's coming back. I think it might have been, there's another situation of fill out a day. What do you need? You just need an empty store with a blank front. And I think it might have been Lolita. They certainly had plenty of empty stores to work with.
Probably a lot more now. That place is a bit of a ghost town.
Lolita, Northern California, which will certainly star later in this movie as the company town, the mysterious company town.
Well, now I will be searching through Lolita for this location in just about a week or two.
Yeah, I can draw you a map. But it would have either been vacant store in Sierra Madre or vacant store in Lolita.
Okay, now the big question. When you shot this, were you totally aware that that was the exact same location that the pods were unloaded in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
I mean, there was not that big of a reason to be shooting in Sierra Madre other than a kind of mini tribute to a movie that I loved.
And right around that corner, in the direction the car is pointed, that street is the Church from the Fog. They're heading right towards it, right around that corner. And this is now a Domino's Pizza.
Yeah.
It is. This TV shop is now a Domino's Pizza. So you can
So
order
fans-
a pie from
right.
the Halloween 3 TV store. I'm an endless source of useless information.
Now we're in Northern California, in and around Lolita, and let's see, did we actually shoot any in that other town, the movie town close by, that quaint?
Fairfield or Fairview?
Yeah,
That's where Salem's Lot was shot. And what's that Darabont movie with Jim Carrey?
The Majestic?
The Majestic was shot there too. Yeah.
Yeah, we scouted the hell out of it, and I think, random shots like this are very close by that town, but I don't think we ever wound up shooting any downtown stuff.
I think it's Fairview is the name of the town. Fairview or Fairfield. It's like 5 miles away. It's the only thing out there other than Lolita.
And this is Lolita. Right there where the sign is.
Yeah.
Or no, where the first storefront is, I think, is that other thing we were talking about.
Damn it. I should have known that years ago. Probably been there a few times.
This is what Lolita is like, though.
Oh,
Whether you're in a movie or not, it is. You go into that town and you feel like there are these people kind of looking at you funny through curtains.
that's exactly what happened to me the first time I went there. We drove like 15 hours straight to get there, and we got there at like 2 a.m. and me and my friends were driving through the town, and curtains were opening and people were staring at us, and we were just laughing that it was like we were in the movie. It was exactly the same.
Yeah, because, I mean, how many outsiders come here and look around?
Only weirdos like me and Rob.
Okay, how about this? Get back to that gas station. See if they know anything. We could pose as a couple of buyers, maybe rent a couple of rooms in that motel.
Yeah,
Couple of rooms.
of rooms. I don't think so, Tom.
God damn it. They told me only one room's left. To shack up together. That's my favorite part of the movie is the whole, where do you want to sleep, Dr. Chalice? It's a stupid question, Mrs. Grimridge. Yeah, actually, the motel here, they're basically like apartments now. People live in them.
Mm-hmm.
I was very disappointed when I got there and found out I couldn't
couldn't
rent the
rent.
room.
Yeah.
I wanted to be in the room where the magic happened. But were there any sets built for this movie, or was it all practical locations pretty much?
The the big climax in the Stonehenge laboratory thing was a soundstage. As a matter of fact, I think it was the same soundstage as we shot The Fog down there. We shot
That would have been Raleigh Studios then.
Assault on Precinct 13 down there. Yeah,
Yeah.
originally Producer's Studio when we were brand new at it, and then Raleigh Studios later. And way before that, it was like Charlie Chaplin and other silent stars filmed in there.
Yeah, I think, wasn't it originally owned by Desi Arnaz or something? Or?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe it was. But yeah, the big climax scene in the, where the Stonehenge stone is sequestered as a soundstage. Now, no black for those guys. They wear colors. I love the look of that frame. It's all creamy and many toned.
Little Buddy.
That's Lil Buddy.
Yep. Currently a rabbi.
No, are
Yeah.
you serious?
Yes, he is. He's now a rabbi. The little kid that just gave the bird as a rabbi. Brad Schechter.
Mrs. Tom Atkins at the time, coming out of the car, Garn Stevens.
A.K.A. Marge Gutman.
Mm-hmm.
Real American name, Marge Gutman.
Yeah, see how that black outfit just disappears in the background? She doesn't... Bugs me. Bugs the hell out of me. How'd she win that argument? God, I'm usually obnoxious about stuff like that.
I need a drink. Here it comes.
Go, Stacy. Good job.
Yeah. I was going to take this box of condoms I brought and just use them for water balloons, but I don't know if you got a better idea.
Listen, we're Americans. We're never going to get over to have and have not and that Lauren Bacall stuff.
Well, it's good to see she got over the death of her father so quickly. That's what's important, really. She's had time to mourn. You know.
This is truly Invasion of the Body Snatchers, this kind of stuff.
Okay. That's Jamie Lee Curtis's voice, correct?
I think so. You know, honestly, it all gets kind of cloudy, so I wish I could give you a definitive answer, but I believe
it sounds
is.
like her, and that's been the rumor, and I've been meaning to ask her, and I'm going to.
Yeah,
right
and
after
she'll have to confirm, because I don't know if it's insulting to her, but I can't remember, honestly.
I wonder if she remembers. I don't know. But it definitely sounds like her. Have you ever heard that rumor before?
Never actually.
Yeah.
This is the little, just the power of single shots that I kind of stumbled on in Halloween. The ending of Halloween, when we just cut around all the empty streets, those were not on the schedule. I stole all of those from pre-slate, you know, just before the slate comes in or just after the actor leaves the frame. And there's nothing like it sometimes. It's just a static shot of an empty street or an empty lot or something. And when you string a few of them together, it creates a great suspense, a great sense of expectancy.
That little store is still there. And
wow.
It's still a little grocery store. Pretty much the only grocery store in the entire area. I love this guy. Which means that Atkins had already opened it and been sipping on the way back to the room.
This guy.
This is the kind of doctor I want working on me, the one that's always drinking.
God, that makes me think. I had a dentist who had a secret problem. And he had me on the operating table for some wisdom teeth or molars or something. When I smelled whiskey on his breath and canceled the gig.
Oh, really? Was that before or after this movie?
I'm not sure. I'm going to say it was before the movie. I grew up in a town, and the chief industry of the town was the university. And it's amazing in a certain sized town where the one thing, one company can dominate so thoroughly every facet of life in the town. So this is sort of heartfelt, this idea of a place where the one guy dominates. because in that town where I grew up, the university it just throws its weight around, gobbles up people's houses and turns them into parking lots and stuff. It's kind of insidious. Making a movie like this, I didn't think much about the violence. 'Cause it just honestly, to tell you, I guess I'm kind of twisted, but it just didn't seem like a very violent movie. But then these robots come out of the shadows and pull this guy's head off. Oh, somebody back then was watching the cut and they said, man, this is unbelievably violent.
And there's Michael Myers. They pull his head off. Dick Warlock.
Yeah.
So did you cast him because of his work in Halloween 2? Or, I mean, I know you'd known him from other films. But...
Dick was, see, I'd been out of the picture during Halloween 2, but that was the point at which Deborah came to rely on Dick very much. He really proved himself in several ways.
He plays the role almost exactly the same.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, and it's got a lot of power, just by doing not a lot, which is the secret of a lot of good screen acting, is just don't do that much. Just be focused, and he had that.
Are you picking up an order? Huh? Are you picking up an order at the factory? Oh, yeah. I figured. There's no other reason to be in this godforsaken place. All I can say is good luck to both of us. They may make great masks, but ever since they started doing big volume business, the whole guy has to stand in line.
So did she get cast because she was married to Tom at the time? I mean, is that how that kind of worked out? She's great in the movie.
Yeah, it would be unfair to say that was why she got cast. I knew about her because of her proximity to Tom, and she got the part because I think she was the best Marge that I could imagine. But those inside things, they do play a part. To some degree, I mean, I think that works in any business. Somebody's a friend of somebody else, or an acquaintance or a close relative or whatever. Saves time. All of a sudden, you're in the room with somebody who, wow, they're knocking you out, and you didn't have to spend 3 weeks casting, looking at all these different. Ooh, wow, that's kind of sexy. I must say, nude scenes of any sort, hopefully they come off sexy on film, but I can't imagine them ever being sexy to shoot. They're always the most difficult scenes to shoot. Everybody's bending over backwards to make the actors feel okay and feel comfortable, and it's like the most synthetic atmosphere you could ever imagine. Oh, I remember. This is how this started. See, the A side of this scene where Tom Atkins is on the phone, that was shot originally, but the B side is what we added later. Somehow there were several moments in the movie that felt like they needed punching up. And this was a sort of claustrophobic moment when it was like, when you just saw his side of the conversation, it was like, nothing seen, there's nothing coming to life here. So we supplied the other side of the scene so that we could have a grisly murder later on.
They're really getting down to the to what's going on in this town and the death of her father. They're really getting to the research and.
That's right. They're thinking real hard.
Something tells me Dr. Chalice was not motivated by the mystery, solving the mystery. I don't know. swear, Tom beds everybody in his movies. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis and The Fog. I mean, didn't even know her name. Like, he asks her afterwards, "What's your name again?" I mean, it's just like his MO and everything he does. I love
He's
it.
just that kind of a guy, you know.
It's become his trademark.
Do you think that accounts in any way, shape, or form for his
Cult status.
His cult status? He's
Absolutely.
this sort of stud guy.
I think
This
Rob will completely agree.
Yeah.
lady killer thing that he's got going in his movies.
I've got T-shirts of the man. It's respect.
The only mistake that was ever made in his career was shaving his mustache for The Fog. That was the only error ever made. Is there something about that mustache that projects machismo? His mustache could appear at conventions by itself. I mean, it could.
How old are you?
Now he asks.
Yeah.
He's covering all the bases.
What a gentleman.
Well, you know, you want to be able to cut back and forth for contrast. You got the softness and all the funniness over there, and you're setting the audience up for some kind of little eerie something.
It's only the third time I've had sex with you. Now I'm curious how old you are. I'm starting to get a conscience.
Marge, don't fuss around in there with a bobby pin. That's a bad idea.
Yep. Some Star Wars action going to come at you in a second.
Ouch. That was peculiarly effective. I remember seeing it with an audience. That really made him jump. This is a horrific idea, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
That's got to be the grossest insect of all time, too, in my book.
And that's that part of the concept is thoroughly Nigel Neal. I mean, I certainly elaborated on it and did the best I could with it, but the whole idea of how the terror works comes out of Nigel's twisted brain.
Some more Atkins ass action.
Rob, you were asking about influences. I would have to say there was a John Frankenheimer movie called Seconds. Great. I would consider it a horror movie. Great psychological study, I guess. And other movies start coming to mind, like Coma and Stepford Wives, that had to have played a part for me. This idea of something is going on and you're not in on it, and there's tons of cover up, and if you inquire too deeply you could get hurt. That's just one of my favorite kind of movie ideas. So there's another couple of examples, I guess.
Should have made everybody in this film redhead, though. It would have just been that much creepier if everybody was redheads. You know, it's like this town of gingers.
Sean, don't think I didn't try. The original attempt was to have all the gray suits be redheads. It wound up just being like not possible, but that was my original request.
So what was it like working with Dan? I mean, he's amazing.
Dan was I've worked with quite a few veterans. I'm thinking of Roddy McDowell and Richard Crenna and others who are just consummate pros. I mean, they're just always prepared, never any attitude. If they have issues, they're just very straightforward about them. No ego displays. And he came from that school. He was just extremely well prepared, always spot on. Didn't have to do much, just steer ever so slightly. Have to say that he had long speeches that were difficult for him. It was not like he could just keep going on and on with all those lines. He went up quite often. But hey, doesn't matter in the end. What a good guy.
Sure. I just finished sifting the ashes.
What do you have?
I'm starting to wonder if someone happened to tampering with this stuff.
Why?
Well, if that was a hot fire, but there would have to be some bone fragments or teeth or something. I've got nothing here to indicate there was ever a body at all. Just ashes and car parts. How about you?
Listen, Teddy, do me another favor. Will you find out everything you can about Colonel Cochran? He runs Silver Shamrock.
The factory was actually up for sale a little over a year ago.
All right.
Um, and it was like I guess it was an online auction of some sort, but it didn't sell.
What was that factory originally? It was like
A dairy factory. It was like they
processing
produced
plant.
powdered milk, believe it or not. I guess the powdered milk market isn't strong these days. It's just been abandoned for a long time.
Along with the town.
Well, actually, the town is famous for their cheese. There's a cheese place. In fact, that might be it right there. It might be that place right there. Yeah, that is it. I think that building they're walking in front of is the cheese place. And they've got this like world-renowned cheese. I think that's what keeps the town alive, believe it or not. I have not had the cheese yet. Now, this was shot at Don Post Studios, right? Formerly Don Post Studios. They've moved several times since, I believe.
I think it was Don Post. It was or was it Berman? See, we shot at two different mask type studios. One was Berman in South Pasadena. That was where the toy museum was.
Actually, you know what? That probably is Berman's because of all the containers in the background there. At places like Berman's, they sell like latex and all the different pigments and things like that. But the actual factory part where they're pouring the masks and everything inside, I believe that was Don Post. So this probably was Berman's.
Yeah. Now I remember. This was Berman's. That fronts on, I think it's Mission Street.
Real soon, little buddy. Hey, come on, the fun's just starting.
I've seen enough. Let's get
All
out
right.
of here.
Oh, wait. Whoa. So this is Buddy
He's wearing the
Cutler.
same costume from RoboCop.
Mr. Cutler sold more Silver Shamrock masks this year by
Dan looks great in a black suit.
Yes, he does.
There's some Don Post masks back there, though.
Yeah. Well,
Dressed it a
the
little.
better to tie things together.
my other friends, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Look, my apologies for that little bit of a disturbance last night, but I want you both to know that Mrs. Gutman is going to be fine. She's been flown to a hospital in San Francisco. Thank you. And about the confusion over your order, I just tell you.
So geographically, were you thinking of Lolita? I mean, because obviously San Francisco would be the closest major city to Lolita.
Well, the idea that they traveled to somewhere up in Northern California sounded right to me.
Yes, I was just about to ask them if you'd like to.
We started generally a location survey that went throughout California on the fog, looking for the fog town. And all of that, of course, paid off handsomely for us. on Halloween 3, we'd already seen many, many towns that we could just either say maybe or check off and say no, it's not going to work. So the search that brought us Lolita was more abbreviated than the one for The Fog, which started in Eureka and went all the way to past Los Angeles.
So this is Don Post Studios.
Yes. And that's back to Berman.
So the toy museum was at Berman's.
Mm-hmm. And pretty much, I mean, we gussied it up a little bit, but pretty much looked like this. You know, he just had all these eccentric, wacko toys. And we dressed in the masks, of course, and it's sort of like what art directors do well, you know, is make sure there's a veracity to the story added to whatever you walk in and look and go, God, it's perfect. But then you still got to add your stuff.
What is the dead dwarf gag? I want to know what that is. He mentions it.
And that comes all the way from Nigel Neal without me having any idea what it might be.
Can you talk a bit about these mask designs? Because I feel like these are the three things that are like the epitome of Halloween when you think of the holiday.
The Don Post gets exclusive credit for the skull and the witch. They already existed, and for the sake of our story, we wanted a trio of masks, and so we jammed with Don. A collaboration to come up with the design for the jack-o'-lantern, and it didn't take long, you know. I mean, I gave him some sketches and some ideas, and he came back with something, and we traded it back and forth a time or two, and then he came up with that, and that's one of my favorite features of this movie is just those masks. I was troubled. I've always been troubled. It was a difficult thing to have it be Halloween 3, and yet not a sequel for the thing that got the movie made to be its biggest curse, if you will. So within the story, somewhere in there, I referenced the Halloween 3 as being what you call the three masks that were being marketed in the story. Desperately trying to find some way to rationalize or justify the title, which felt like a millstone. And yet, as much as I would love for it to have been called Season of the Witch, standalone title, it wouldn't have gotten made unless it was called Halloween 3.
And what about the Season of the Witch subtitle? Where did that come from? Was that always the working title for it?
I'm not sure when that dropped into play. There was a famous hit song by Donovan, and so it was in the air. It was kind of in the wind. I might have come up with that myself. I honestly don't remember exactly at what point it dropped in.
This is all shot in the rear of the factory in Lolita.
Yeah,
all that stuff outside.
Actual.
Yeah, it's right. It's really there behind it. In fact, that no admittance sign on that door, the red lettering, is still
there.
Yeah. The final processing sign's gone. I would have stole that if it was still there.
I always loved the score that both John and Alan had contributed to this film. I mean, you yourself as a musician, can you talk about kind of what you were looking for in the music, and had you dabbled with maybe doing the score yourself too?
Well, no, John had that End of the Street covered just fine, and I was really happy about that. I think it's one of his most sophisticated scores. There are times in even Halloween, which we'll all agree is a masterpiece, and yet for me there are times when the music is not subtle. The theme is a classic, of course, But the way you use music in a movie is crucial. And if you just keep hammering on like pop-up moments with stings, you can start to feel manipulated. And on this movie, I thought John was starting to, with more experience as a film composer under his belt at this point, I thought he was starting to really develop more subtlety about the way his cues supported a scene or provided some eerie atmosphere. The music really plays a huge part here, and yet it didn't rise to that thing of having a hummable master theme. I sort of missed that, and yet I couldn't complain because I thought it did its job beautifully.
It's definitely my favorite score that him and Alan have done.
It's got more sort of parts to it.
So I'm a big fan of like the synth sound.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, the band Kraftwerk has just appeared. They're coming to go after him for stealing their musical ideas. I actually did that. I got up against that window and pretended I was crawling out of it. I'm such a nerd. The people in there didn't see me, thank God.
What's disturbing is that you're admitting all of this,
Yeah,
Sean.
it's been long enough that I don't think I can get in trouble for it.
But now we know.
I'll never be invited back to Lolita. Never gonna get to taste that cheese. It's a shame.
Well, I succumb to the same film convention that a lot of directors do. This guy is running around and ducking, and these guys, to not see him, are really bad at their job. But I thought this little maneuver was kind of cool.
I did this too. I did the duck in the phone booth. But the second time I went back to Lolita, the phone booth was gone. I was very disappointed. It was there the first time, which was probably 15 years ago I went.
Hey, phone booths are part of prehistory.
It's a great bar right there, by the way, at the corner. The only bar in town. So when in Lolita, make sure. It's called something Rose. I can't remember the name of it.
Sacred Rose.
I don't know. I just knew it was the only public restroom in town, so I'd buy a drink just to be courteous.
See, to me, this has always been one of the most suspenseful aspects of the movie. This part right here, just the idea that he walks away, comes back, and the girl's gone, and he's stuck in this town, can't get an outside line. And you kind of think, what the hell would I do if I was trapped in this town and nobody's around? The one person I know has been kidnapped.
Yeah, would you go in? But then you're not getting paid, That was a great location. So all this texture and stuff. Now we're in the soundstage. I think.
Might be Don Post again. It's all the molds and everything.
Depends on what we cut to next. Maybe it could have been anywhere then.
Well, this might be Berman's again. Who knows? Who knows what you did, Tommy?
Well, got a shooting day.
Yeah, that would be Berman's.
Yep.
And that probably cuts to the soundstage.
So yeah, that little piece of creeping was, and this is Berman's, that little piece of creeping was probably Don Post.
Big Brother.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great dangers of our existence as sort of corporate and government overseeing of our lives. Big companies, Big Brother. This is Berman. This is in Berman. I think that doll may have belonged to Berman. And I know we didn't make it up from scratch. I think we didn't make it up from scratch anyway.
Kind of like the Halloween 1 trick there.
Yeah.
Coming into the light from the dark.
Yeah. Yeah, that's his soundstage.
There's Dick.
And we already know what he can do with a human head, so.
I remember Dick telling me that was frozen orange juice.
That's correct. That widescreen, man, you can just put tons of people in the frame and still just so. By that point, I'd done some television, which is almost a square. It's 1:33 to 1. This is there was a smaller widescreen at 1:85 to 1, and then what we were working in here was 2:35 to 1. These aspect ratios, just fabulous wide screen. You can do anything in the frame.
Did you have a lot of conversations with Dean Cundey in terms of how to approach shooting this film, or?
Well, of course, we conferred at length on any given scene, but after having worked together side by side a couple of times, we had a lot of shorthand to work with, so we knew he knew the overall look that I was going for based on, I did pretty elaborate storyboards for this picture. And so he was awfully good at kind of telegraph mentality. He could anticipate pretty well what I was after. So Rob, I guess in the end, we didn't have all that many conversations because he was so good at anticipating. And if it was different from what I might have had in mind, it was 99 times out of 100, it would be better than what I had in mind. So maybe not so much conversation.
Everything from this period that Dean shot just has like this very distinct look.
Yeah,
so it's like you could tell that he was involved.
Yeah, he's got a great sense of how to. He can put one foot in the commercial considerations and make sure that you can see what the actors are doing, but he took the time to light for deep. He knew that John was enamored with deep focus photography, which takes longer, especially when you have you're working with widescreen anamorphic photography. Your light levels, it's very tricky stuff, and you can lose focus easily. Suppose you're focused on a foreground object. To get that background object to also be in focus is very demanding. Takes a long time to get it right. And what most people do, they don't have the time or they're just lazy. They'll let the background be soft And if you insist that no, the background needs to be sharp too, you're in for more time waiting for the lighting, but the patience pays off. It just, as you say, Rob, it has a look, unmistakable look.
I feel that the Carpenter's films, once Dean left, they definitely didn't look as good. I mean, there was, I think the John Carpenter look, as it was kind of quoted, was really the Dean Cundey look, because it had a certain style, like in The Fog, and obviously Halloween 1, 2, and 3. And I mean, it's lost in his later films once Dean moved on.
Oh, I would say though that to John's credit, that the Dean Cundey look came from collaborating with John, because John insisted on that deep focus effect.
Maybe his later DPs didn't get it quite as well. I don't know, but I mean, there's something about those films, like the 2, 3, 5, and just the richness, that just aren't there in the later films.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope always when we're talking about these movies that Dean gets the credit he deserves, because he made a major contribution.
I also had a question about something, excuse me, we saw just earlier, the title placements, of like Halloween and the different dates. That was something that was, used in the first Halloween. Was that a conscious effort?
To tie the two together?
Yeah.
Probably subconscious. It wasn't a designed in feature consciously. It's just, I think John and I were both, our storytelling techniques were such that we needed those titles from time to time, and where they were placed in the frame would have largely been my decision, being a meticulous graphic designer with way too much eye for detail, some perhaps useless detail. So maybe that was me. This is a set, of course. I'd forgotten that in addition to the big main set, the Stonehenge type set, there were these little rooms where the dirty deed was done.
What was it like working with all those bugs and snakes and all that? And was that a big pain in the neck? Or?
It was a little scary because that was a real rattlesnake. I mean, poisonous creature on set. It made everybody nervous, as well it should. By the way, this the big main set, something I enjoyed as somehow a tribute to the movies. The walls of the set are the walls of the soundstage, so that we didn't actually, we had it was a big deal to get that thing put together, but it was all about set decorating and getting the stone going and all these electronics and TVs to do. But the actual surrounding structure, the stairs, the walls, the signs like exit signs and stuff, that was just pure raw soundstage. And I love that. I love that kind of showing backstage, as it were.
The moment that scarred me, and I'm sure plenty of other children out there.
Forever and ever.
I always love this. To me, this one shot is kind of iconic. The picture of the kid like grabbing at the mask. Back in the days before the internet, where you could see everything, there was always like one or two pictures that just like summed up a movie.
Like,
and for me, that's what that was for this.
Kind of horror porn, I guess.
It is.
And the concerned parents just laughing at the kid as he's melting. They're like, look at him having a good time.
You didn't have any problem with the MPAA when it came to killing a child on screen?
They had us make a couple of trims. I believe there were a couple of just a few frames of trim here and there. Excessive buggage, I guess. I don't know. And also in the Marge scene, I remember there was some kind of problem around how long we stayed on her grizzly face or something. But that was it. I mean, it just wasn't. They didn't have that much concern. The MPAA is far more worried about sex, and especially about nudity, of all things. Even if, having a sort of healthy attitude about nudity, like a full front male nude, say, in a scene where nobody's actually doing anything. They've been so squeamish for so many years that it's taken a long time for them to develop any kind of healthy attitude about just shooting people naked. Just, even if all they're doing is having a cup of coffee. It's also very subjective. Somebody who has, it just isn't the same for everybody all the way across the board. Some certain amount of it, I think, has to do with how much influence you have, how successful you are in the community. They could come down a little harder on little people if they wanted to.
Crack the dominoes.
Looking back on this, we had a lot of technical demands here. Shooting with video, I don't recommend it. It's really, or at least it was then, really complicated to get a good image if there's a TV screen involved. It takes time. And playback is really a weird thing, how much time it consumes.
It's kind of cool that the kids that live are the kids that aren't trendy and buy the same mask that everybody else. It's the rebels that get to live. I like that. If you didn't buy the trendy mask, you live.
I like that. That's good, Sean.
That's like the kind of iconic image from the film right there. That I have to say, that's one of the greatest one sheets ever.
Yeah. Oh, it just floored me when I saw it. I had the idea to try it on the one sheet from that shot we just saw, and leave it. Speaking of anamorphic, the shot that you get when the lens of the projector is not stretching it back out to normal is elongated and doubly eerie, and that was the image we went with for the one sheet, and is in fact on the front of your t-shirt, even as we speak, Rob.
Yeah.
Rob is sporting the Fright Rags Halloween 3 shirt.
Had to do it.
I'm sporting the new official one, apparently. I don't know who makes it. It's good to see this film starting to get the love it deserves, though, because it's over the years it was sort of the bastard child, and now it's finally found its place in horror film history, I think, and get the appreciation from the fans.
There's another widescreen thing that I just love, having a big frame where, oh shit, the bad guy is way the hell over there. What you're saying, Sean, is, boy, it sure meant a lot to me. Rob and I were talking about it earlier. To have this movie, I didn't really know that anyone cared until I went on a couple of these horror-thon weekends for fans that you got me started on, Sean. I had no idea. So the fact that there are people out there who are like making it into part of their annual Halloween ritual was so gratifying. It really healed a wound for me, because when people started saying, "No, we love this movie. It's terrific." Wow. It had hurt so badly that it went out there and laid a big egg and was excoriated, for various sins, mostly being not Jamie, not Knife, not Shape, not Donald Pleasance. It just, boy, it hurt. And it's really gratifying that it, ooh, ouch,
Was this always off camera, or was there ever anything shot graphic?
off camera. Remember, this is all like additional footage. So, low budget shoot, special effects, skull and drill going in ear. We wouldn't have been able to afford it, and B, I think I'd gotten finished with the gore at that point and thought maybe it's just better off camera.
It was like in the case of Halloween 2, they went back to add gore,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Yeah, it was a judgment call. But
I like it. I mean, I always thought that what's in your mind is worse than what
yeah,
you see.
yeah. It seems in a way far more gruesome that you don't see it.
Here comes the classic speech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He delivers this perfectly.
Yeah, this is the essence of it, and this is pretty much what Nigel did. This is from his script. I elaborated on a little bit, but it's the essence of his premise.
The placement of the skull mask, is perfect too. It just kind of adds to the tone.
That room, there's a camera in there, of course, and while we were shooting, I needed the mask to go fly up through the air and land on the camera. And I remember while we were rehearsing, I said, yeah, just do it like this. And I flipped the mask across the room and it landed perfectly on the camera. And the whole camera crew looked at each other and looked at Dean, and Dean looked at me and said, I wish you hadn't done that. And for them, it was a jinx. And sure enough, I didn't get it right again, the toss, until about take 49.
I think a lot of the appreciation for this film now, years later, has a lot to do with, I like the other Halloween films, the ones with Michael Myers, but come October, there's not a tremendous amount of movies about Halloween, the holiday itself,
Yeah.
So this one is one of the few that really incorporates a lot of the other elements of Halloween that us as horror fans really appreciate and love.
Yeah, Rob, our sentiment about trying to do an anthology series, that this would be one of just dozens of movies on the subject, I think it was the right idea, because there are so many great stories you could tell. But in fact, of what does exist, Halloween isn't so much about Halloween. Hey, there's Jamie.
I
Even
just want
as we
to point
speak.
out how brilliant this scene is. Just the use of the original score, because it's on TV, fits the scene perfectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, the original Halloween was originally called The Babysitter Murders, and it's more about babysitters than it is about Halloween. But this movie is about the season. It's about why it's there. And it is about pagan stuff. And old religion and those sorts of issues that they're fun to contemplate. I'm still kind of astonished that those who have the power to do so with the franchises and ownership of rights and stuff haven't pushed farther into the Halloween idea, not just as a Michael Myers sequel, but just other Halloween stories, because it just seems so fertile.
Was John much of a presence on set at all, or?
Not so much on set. John was the perfect godfather producer, because he was there anytime I needed
Here it comes.
his feedback about something or his advice. Shwoop, just like that. Take 49. And rehearsal. He was there when I needed him, but he kept his distance consciously, I think, because his he cast a pretty long shadow, and so for him to be there would invite that awful situation no director wants, where you say what you want and everybody's heads turn to this other authority figure to see if they approve of your decision. And he made damn sure that never happened. He was absolutely exemplary as a Godfather producer.
43 share. You think so?
Well, we're kind of leading towards what I consider a pretty dark ending for a horror movie. I know as a kid it affected me very deeply because you're not used to films ending where it's implied that children die, children my age. So I'm wondering, was that always in Nigel's script? Was that something you?
Yes, it was.
It was. So was there any
Absolutely.
concern about it ending that way, or did you always feel that was just the right way to end the movie?
Well, I liked that premise, and I don't feel like I'm the cop, the ethics cop about what issues to deal with regarding children. I would never make honor a child molester, for example, or anything like that. But doing a bad guy who does evil to children, I think that's a fair subject for a dramatic presentation where nobody under 17 is supposed to go in here anyway. If kids see it, I feel like all the rules are in place for them not to see it, so I'm not gonna try and second guess that system. But I felt confident that I was being responsible as an adult, but dealing with a subject that was, I thought, fair game. I mean, gosh, if you go back to the Bible stories, you got all kinds of dirt being dealt to children all the time, including Solomon, at least in theory. So that was okay with me. I thought where you were going, Rob, was the overall idea of the ending that is open-ended, that says, in effect, you may be next, it's coming, it's here, stop it. But did we stop it? Did they stop it? We don't know. And that was definitely very conscious, as a kind of, in a way, an attempt to make right what I thought had been a major wrong committed on invasion of the Body Snatchers. I'm sure you're aware, being the horror fans that you are, that the Don Siegel version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it has a bookend, beginning and ending, that was added later. After the shooting was done, they were just really scared. The studio was frightened that they were going too far. And so they added a bookend structure to soften that and to reassure the audience that it was okay. The problem is being solved. The evil is being defeated. And I hated that. I just thought, that's terrible. I can't stand that. So I was trying to right that wrong in a way by leaving the ending ambiguous. I just loved that image. It was Kevin McCarthy. The movie was supposed to end Kevin McCarthy looking right into camera, going, whatever his line was, you're next. I believe it was, something like that. So to have Tom up there in big close-up imitating that effect, saying, stop it. And believe me, Universal came back on us and asked about it. But John had creative control. And so all he did was turn to me and ask me what I thought. And I said, I think we ought to stick with it. And I'm glad we did.
I'm a big fan of down endings.
Yeah.
Just because every Hollywood always wants to tie everything together for you and
Make it nice.
Yeah, it's a good like Henry, A Portrait of a Serial Killer is a perfect example of a great down ending. And this is also one. I just love that. It makes you think more, I think, when you leave the theater.
Well, you don't have the luxury. It takes these kinds of movies to make it possible for those other kind of movies to not be so predictable. If you have a few of these floating around, at least there's a possibility your ending may not come out okay.
No.
And I think that's critical. It's more like life, after all. Yeah, these big concrete columns were ours that we brought in for them to work around. I needed something in the way of stuff to hide behind, basically. But the walls are the soundstage. Something about that. I just really loved working in that environment. And when he goes up high to all the wooden catwalks up above, that's pure soundstage. We didn't do a thing, but we treated it like a location. Just went up there and shot.
Okay, so back to the Ellie robot thing, because we got to bring it up. Was that something that was thought of after the fact, or was that always in the original script? Because it kind of seems to come out of nowhere.
I think John and I sort of invented the whole Ellie robot thing. I don't think that had anything to do with Nigel's version. And of course it's built into the story because of this toy maker who builds robots. Clearly his whole police force, security gang is robotic. But I think it was us writing ourselves into a sort of corner and wondering how to pull ourselves out of it. That Ellie got involved in being a robot. You got to remember the time. The time was, there were always, and I mean always, these twist endings. After Halloween, which sort of toyed with a few false endings, but it wasn't that much of twistiness. All the movies that followed, all the scary movies that followed, were twisting like crazy, constantly. Oh, you thought it was that, but it's this, ha ha ha. And I think we got caught up in that to some degree.
I like to believe she wasn't a robot until she got kidnapped, but I'm
You
an
know,
optimistic fan.
that's how I wrote it for my part. That while she was in there, that she got robotized. But logically speaking, that means they had to work awfully fast.
Yeah.
And that was the slam on that.
I like to think of an entire backstory where she was actually a sex robot that he created that got loose and started to think she had her own mind and feelings and thought that guy was her father, and that's why they killed him originally. That's my whole backstory.
Wow.
That requires an entire scene on a rooftop like Blade Runner.
I'm thinking prequel.
Yeah,
And is it any coincidence that Stacy was supposed to be in Blade Runner as a replicant? Think about that.
Wow.
She was cut from Blade Runner. It's all coming together now. I see the picture. Okay, now I need to know what happens to his head. What does he turn into here? I've never been able to figure that part out.
Well, it
It's like a smiling snowman.
it was kind of like the most elaborate version of his head explodes. It's like that thing hits him from both sides, and off he goes. He sort of crystallizes because he's a warlock, hundreds and hundreds of years old. So he doesn't have snakes coming out of him. That would be too, he's way advanced beyond that. I guess that's kind of a cheesy matte shot, but I love it.
Works though. It's got that great Halloween color to it, that autumn look.
Yeah. Coming up, the shot that nearly wiped Dean and me and several other crew members out. Dick Warlock really revved up behind the wheel of the red car, and all it was supposed to be was just coming by and pulling off the road. And Dick just got revved up, and the car broke loose. And if it hadn't been for this somewhat random telephone pole that nicked the back bumper as it was sliding toward us, about to kill us all, we would have not made it. Right here, boom! It was actually skidding toward us, and the telephone pole turned the car back around, and it went past us.
And to back up your theory, though, she never speaks since he found her, so maybe they hadn't gotten the vocal part finished.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just got the latex right.
Yeah.
What? God, I can't remember. I think Dick told me a story about this, how he scared the crap out of Stacy. But I can't remember if it was from that car gag that you just mentioned or right after.
Cheap trick.
Such a shame.
Yeah, bad things happened here.
So she was obviously buried under the ground there in that part.
Yeah.
Was that actually in the ground somewhere? Or was that a sound stage?
It was that same night. We had a little platform out there that they built that on, so we could just do it right there and then.
It never ends.
Yeah. Oh, me. I've just still got way too much of the giant Gila monster in me. I just love these kind of cheesy moments like that. I guess this goes so far as to be satire when this many fake scares.
Good thing you cut out the scene where it's chasing him
Yeah,
later.
right. Comes into this frame.
Comes into frame right there, running after him, headless and armless.
Yeah.
That was when it went too far.
Speaking of, were there any deleted scenes? Anything missing from this that you had to cut?
I don't think anything of any significance. As usual, you got your entrances and exits, shoe leather walking up to the building kind of scenes, but there was nothing significant. I must say that when you're working on a pretty low budget and you're hustling your brains out, you wind up in the cutting room without a lot of excess to play with.
Tom's so good in this moment, he totally sells it.
Mm-hmm. But yet he doesn't bother to tell these kids to take their masks off. I'm going to save the world, but these little bastards, screw them.
Oh, man. That's going to keep me up at night, thinking about that. But, yeah.
It's a good thing the number you called is tied into all the major TV stations.
Yeah. Magical realism here.
But hey, it's a movie. It's not reality.
You're right, though, and you make a good point, Rob. When you get right down to it, you still need good performances, and sometimes that's the only thing between pure cheese and something that really works.
I mean, that gives me a chill. Ever since I first saw it as a kid.
And then you got to think of yourself right then. If that happened, then he would die just like Buddy Senior did, because all that
All
stuff
this- yeah,
would all
that'd
the
come
stuff would
out.
start coming out
Yeah.
of the kids, and
Yeah.
he could have prevented by telling them to take their masks off.
Yeah.
But he did not.
He didn't. He probably had a couple of drinks before, so he wasn't thinking straight.
Wow. I mean, again, I speak for, I think, all Halloween fans that it's just such a thrill to be able to pay tribute to this movie now all these years later. I think it's much deserved. And I guess in closing, I mean, is there anything that you want to say to the fans or anything you want to talk about now that we've kind of revisited the movie again?
Well, I'm grateful this movie was made at a time when what followed was videotape and then DVD and then all the other ways of carrying this movie into people's sets, television sets, and other ways of viewing it, or it would have died the death that so many movies died before it. It's just like neglect. And man, thanks fans, it didn't die. It keeps going. Halloween comes up every year, and I can't tell you how many people have said, "Oh, watch it every year like religion," and it's part of my Halloween fun and the ritual of the season. So wow, I just even a few years ago I had no idea that it might be doing that for people. Man, if we're making people happy with this, that's just great.
Thanks to the Shout Factory for finally recognizing its significance. I mean, this is long, long overdue. Hopefully somebody can get on Fright Night 2 next. We need that.
Coming right up.